And I'm coming live today to talk about how to surrender and actually let go. And so I want to share, of course, from the space that I know, my own life. And so I was dealing with this situation because I have been on this journey for probably the last 10 years. I've been on this journey for about 10 years, and I've been really, studying and learning and growing spiritually. But what I came to at this point is the time of surrender. And so surrender gets a bad rap, it gets a bad name. People think that it's a bad thing, but surrendering is actually an amazing thing. And it also allows you to grow and to expand, because what happens is you start changing your mindset, you start changing your perspective on life and things. And so for me, that was one thing that I have started to do. And so Spirit has been calling me to do this work that I love to do. I love to do healing work. I love to help people to shift. I love all of that. I love to help people to grow. I love to help people to step into their gifts. I love to do all of those things. However, I was doing them for free. And I got to the point, I think, where I felt jaded about the work, because I felt like people were coming to me, but they were only coming because I was going to do it for free. And so, and then I felt bad about really charging, but that was something that I had to surrender as well. And so once I came to this point where I started really, learning about surrender, and that it wasn't a bad thing and it didn't make me weak, because that was one of the things that I thought about. When I thought surrender, I thought that meant weak. I thought that meant you were giving up, taking yourself out of the equation. But really what it is you are taking yourself out of the equation and you are giving up, but you're giving up in order to receive those things that you desire, the things that you want to manifest. You're letting things go. And so for me, I started thinking about the abandonment wound. And so I had this abandonment wound that I identified. It took me years to identify and really realize what that meant in my life. And so when I started thinking about that, I started realizing that, because I'm a person that like to hold on to things, that was something that was the result of that. Erica, thank you for joining. Good evening. And so I thought about that and I said, I can make this shift. I can do it. But y'all know what? It was not easy, and it's still not easy. I'm still on that journey. I'm still surrendering daily different things. I'm still surrendering, perceptions and mindsets and all of that. And it's not easy because you look at it, it's almost like when you start trying to diet. I'm gonna use that example. Or not even diet, but shift the way that you're eating, because I don't believe in diets. I personally eat whatever I want, but I just don't eat a lot of anything. Like, I typically eat small amounts of everything, because I believe that I can have what I desire. And once you believe that and you know that you can have what you desire, then things will begin to shift for you. But what I want to say is that for me, and I'm talking about myself here, y'all, because that's who I can talk about. For me, I started really understanding that my words are powerful, the things that I say about myself and to myself. And so I started shifting the words that I say. Like, I don't even say trying, because what does that even mean? When I started unpacking that and, looking at, because I even go through sometimes, y'all, and I go Google search and look at definitions of things and see what it means, and look also in the context of it. It's almost like when you read the Bible. Okay, you read the Bible is amazing. I love the Bible. But you have to think about context in that. You can't just pull a scripture out, from here and say, oh, this scripture says this. Okay, yeah, but what was around that scripture? What was going on at the time? What was going on in the hearts and the minds of the people? These are all things that, I say that we need to do when we study the Bible. Right now, I'm reading the book of Enoch because that was something I wanted to read. I actually read it when I was probably a teenager because my grandmother had lots of books, and she had the lost books of the Bible, and Book of Enoch was one of those. And so I read that years and years ago. So now I'm rereading it. This was probably 40 years ago when I read it, but I just got another copy and I started reading it and started, just paying attention to, the words that are in there and then looking at the context. And what I know is that a lot of times we can look at the words, we can look at them, and we can actually feel the energy in the words. Have you ever done something where somebody sent you a message, and this happens a lot on text. Somebody sent you a message, a text message, and you looked at the words, and the words might have said one thing, but you could feel the energy behind the words, and you kind of knew what they meant when they were saying that, even if they didn't say it directly. That's kind of the same thing how spirit works with us. Sometimes, we just need to surrender. We need to allow spirit to come through and help us. And sometimes, because people always say this, they say, well, if you, yes, if they say, if you, if you've done everything else, then pray. Okay, I don't agree with that. I really don't. I believe that you need to pray first. You shouldn't do everything else and then pray. Because to me, that means that you don't believe. That means that you don't believe. You know what I mean? So why even pray? I mean, if you don't believe, why pray anyway? The Bible tells us that all the time. And so, I think about it like this. And then the other part too, with the surrender for me is I had to stop. I'm going to share this card. I had to do this. Give zero. I had to stop giving too many fucks. This says you are giving too many fucks. And so I had to stop that. I had to stop that, about many things. It's like, what does it matter in the long and the short of it? You know what I mean? What does it matter? What does it matter if someone disrespected you today in the checkout line that you don't even know, that doesn't know you? What does it matter? Let it go. Just shut it down. And just begin to be on that journey of surrender. And the thing is about surrender, it's powerful. I used to think it was for weak people and it was weak. And I felt bad about it, especially even like in the church, they used to tell us, we submit, submit to our husbands, submit to God, don't submit to the devil, all these things. But what I learned is that submission is a gift. Submission is a gift because everybody doesn't know how to do it. And yes, I do submit to my husband. I do. I believe in it. Because I believe that I'm honoring him as I'm honoring God. Yeah, I believe all that. I believe that. I do. But I know that, we have to submit. We have to do that. We have to submit. And we have to allow ourselves to let go. And what I'm finding out, y'all, is it's a beautiful space. Because for me, it's like, oh my God, the healing that has come forward in my body and in my soul and my mind and everything, just from submitting, just from surrendering, just from letting go. Just let that shit go. And a lot of times, we keep up with things and we refuse to let go of them just because we're holding on. And for me, I'm going to tell you, I had this abandonment wound because my parents split up when I was a child. Now, I know that's not a big deal to a lot of people because a lot of people were raised with single mothers and single fathers and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about me. So with me, my parents split up when I was a child. I don't even know how old because nobody told me. I just knew I went to live with my grandparents, which that's what I wanted anyway, because I love my grandparents. I really feel like they're really my parents. My parents just kind of brought me in, but my grandparents were really my parents, And so I know that, but I was so grateful because I love my grandparents. And my grandmother, she was a pastor, but she was my first energy healer. She was an energy healer. She just didn't know it at the time. Because I think about some of the things that she did. She did reflexology because she would touch a place on your foot that would cause your headache to go away. All kinds of stuff she knew, and she was amazing at it, and she taught me so much. And I really truly believe that I'm here to keep her legacy going. Because she was a healer and she was a pastor. She was amazing. And so I wanted to live with them anyway, so it didn't matter to me. But, of course, later on, I started thinking about it, and I was like, I don't even know when they split up. But that created an abandonment wound in me that I didn't even know I had until just here recently, in like the last year, too, maybe. I started feeling that thing and feeling into it and seeing how, I can shift out of it, and what I needed to do in order to, make myself better, because how it affected me, and I'm gonna tell you, is I held on to everything. So now I'm going through processes where I'm decluttering things because I held on to too much crap, just crap, not even things that meant anything. I mean, like, I did hold on to some of those, but and that should have taught me the lesson too, is I put them in storage when I moved across the country, because my story is, in case you don't know, I moved across the country in 2013. I left South Carolina in the US and moved to Arizona, clear across the country, like thousands of miles. And I just packed my car, what I could pack, and everything else I put in a little storage, which I should have just got rid of. I should have got rid of it, because it was just ridiculous for me to do that, because at the time I wasn't even thinking that I was going to have to come back and get that stuff. It just did not even cross my mind. And so, but I did that. And so I lost a whole bunch of stuff in storage because why? I didn't have a job. I got fired from 2 jobs in the process of this. Once I moved across the country, I had 2 jobs, which I kind of always have had up until these last, since I married my husband, about 10 years. I had 2 jobs always for years, decades, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, but always at least 2. Because my thinking was, if I lose one, then at least I have another one. And so that was like flawed thinking, because I lost both of them like within a week of each other. Like, I got fired from one and then I got fired from another. And I don't know if y'all know, but I had never been fired in my entire life. And so that did something to my mind. It just really did something to my mind. And I had to work through that as well, because it made me really skeptical of these jobs, and it almost made me think, okay, how do I need to do this? But when I think about it now, it was God opening that door for me to stop working like that. Now, the way that happened, I would not, I mean, it was not a good way for me, the way it happened. However, it happened, and it was a good thing that it happened. So I can look back now and see, but at that point, I had lost 2 jobs. I was already, paycheck to paycheck, because I had moved and I had to, all that. And so, but I lost 2 jobs, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so I should have really listened then and started paying attention, but I didn't, because that's what we do a lot of times. We don't pay attention and we don't listen, and then we wonder why shit falls apart, and so really I had to really just start surrendering actually then. I surrender to what I thought it should look like. And a lot of times that's what we need to do. We surrender to what we think it should look like and accept what it is, or accept what you desire it to be, or create what you want. And so I started learning, leaning into all of that. I started learning Reiki. I learned energy healing, different modalities. I have a whole bunch of different modalities that I have studied and learned. I actually went back to school. I got my bachelor's degree in metaphysics. I'm working now on my master's, which is what I'm going to be doing this evening, is working a little bit on that, because that is something that, is on my mind to do, to get my master's and my PhD. And my goal is to get them by this time next year, my PhD. My master's, I expect to have that by the end of the year. My PhD by this time next year, because I've been wanting it, and I have gotten some inspiration from a good friend of mine. So I'm so excited about that. But yeah, so just to be able to be in this space, to surrender to God, so that you can finally just let go, and allow and start really walking in the flow, in your divine feminine, really entreating yourself, and also knowing. And so one of the ways that I was able to do this is I listened to God and I made this cross country trip, which was amazing, because cross the country was where I met my husband. He's my professional husband. I had a starter husband, and I actually, yeah, I had a starter husband. And so now this one is my professional husband, and I met him by crossing the country. And in essence, I met him by listening to God. Going where I went to meet him. I went and met him at a church. I was going with a friend of mine, and he came visiting. So went to church, met him at church. You know, it was just amazing. And it's funny because neither one of us went to that church. And I don't think we went too much longer after that. When we went back after we got married, just to, introduce them and let them know that, we met there in this church. So it was just an amazing time. But yeah, just being able to surrender, and then prayer was another thing. Like, I am a prayer warrior, and I have been since I was 3 years old. My grandmother used to call me up to the front of the church to lay hands on people and pray. They would get healed. And so I knew that this was a part of my destiny. But I was afraid of it for years, decades. I was afraid of it. And one of the reasons why I was afraid was because I felt called to the metaphysics. And, my whole family was basically, on my mom's side, Pentecostal. And on my dad, my, uh, my father's side, they're Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah. And so, yeah, but and it's not tragedy, y'all. Like my parents split up. That wasn't a tragic thing. That's why I didn't know and recognize that I had this abandonment wound, because my grandparents, stood in. My grandfather was amazing. I call him my first father. He was amazing, and he's also, my person. In addition to my grandmother, they were my people, and he was amazing and loved me. I've never been hit by a man. I never know what that felt like. So he never spanked, none of that. My bio dad, same thing, but he was just not there very long. And then my mother got married to my dad, and he was there, and he was such a good man. He's such a good man as far as the way that he loved me, and he loved me just like he loved the children that he made with my mama. So it's just, and I feel blessed in that area, and all that. So that's why I didn't realize that I had this abandonment wound going on until I started really diving into it and started getting, you know, surrendering and letting go and allowing. And that's how I started looking at that, And so when I lost myself in storage, y'all, that took me about a couple of days to deal with and get over. But I was resigned to it, and there was nothing I could do because I didn't have any money. I mean, I couldn't catch it up. I couldn't pay for it. Nothing. I mean, like, I had a car note. I had to make sure that was paid because that was the important part. That stuff was stuff. But I had to learn that, and I realized that. And so, in that time, I was able to really grow spiritually, which is crazy because I didn't have no money, y'all. I was broke as a joke. I I didn't have no prospects. I was looking for jobs every single day, putting them in online, consolidating my gas so I wasn't going so many places, going over to, to get, different places, and, filling out applications and all this stuff. And it took me 2 months to get anything. And the application that I filled out back way before I even got fired, it came through like 5 months later, 6 months later. I got hired onto this place. I was looking to work at a prison, so I was working in corrections. And so I got hired there, but I was already working like a part-time job that came through. Like, it was like the only one that came through, and it was paying like shit. Like, it was no money, and it was part-time, so you didn't have benefits. And I probably always worked full-time hours. I never worked that job less than 40 hours until it was time for me to go. So I worked 40 hours, but they didn't give me benefits, which sucked. Anyway, gonna move on through. But yeah, so I really believe that. And so when I started surrendering, because that was really the point, I took that little job and I worked it. And then I got another job. And then I got the job that I wanted, another job. So I had 3 jobs when I met my husband. And he said, no. Decide which job you want to work and work that job, because 3 jobs is too much. And I was grateful and blessed because nobody had ever done that for me. Yes, surrender. And that space, it feels hard, and it is hard. But it is so necessary. And it's such a space that once you start diving into it, and I'm telling you, it's not linear. So you can dive in and you can pull back. Things trigger you and all kinds of stuff. Give yourself grace. Keep moving. But surrender and allow. because I'm telling you, when you do that, God will really start to move for you in your life. God will start to move. And it's just one of those things to me that is so amazing, because it's something that we fight all the time. Because surrender, like I told you, when we started, surrender seemed like a bad word to me. It's like, oh my God, I gotta surrender, I gotta give it all up. But the thing is you give up something to get something else. Depends on where you want to go. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's like this journey of surrender. I've had to give up a few things, and that's okay. I'm all right about that, because here's the other thing that I know. When I give up and I surrender, some things, God has something bigger in store for me, something more huge. This huge, great, big destiny that I have and that we all have. God has it for us. So that's my tidbit on today, my spiel on surrendering and allowing and just making everything great, and just beginning to see. Because when you surrender, you're going to start shifting your perspective on things, and things won't mean as much to you. Some things won't mean as much to you. And that is a thing, y'all. It's like it doesn't mean as much. Sometimes I look at things in my life and I'm like, God, but that ain't even no big deal. You know what I'm saying? And then also too, it keeps you out of drama and, foolishness and BS. Because that God is here for you. That doors are open for you. All you have to do is open your eyes, look for them, and really begin to understand that, God lives inside of us anyway. So it's not like we got to go to a place. We don't have to go. We don't got to go to church if you don't want to. I haven't been to church in I don't know how long. It's been a minute. I did have a church I went to when I was in Arizona that, was amazing, but then they shut down but they were good friends of ours too. They were amazing. But, you have to have money to run these things. And I think they were paying a lot of it out of their pocket and stuff. And so I understand that, but yeah, so I mean, you don't have to go anywhere. You can be right in your house and you can just talk to God. You can just tell them that you surrender. You can just say it. You can just not say it. You can set the intention in your heart and be like, okay, I surrender. And for me, I do it daily. Like, I surrender daily. I don't even play with it, because I know that, sometimes we go back and sometimes we want to pull the reins back. But it's not time for that. It's time for us to surrender. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing too. I always hear people talk about they're waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. Well, let me give you the news flash. God is waiting on you. That is the news flash. God is waiting on you. Let me give you that tool and that tip. God is waiting on you. And I always talk about that thing that they talk about where the guy went to heaven and was like, God, why didn't you save me? And God was like, well, I sent you a boat. I sent you a car. I sent you a plane. I sent you a helicopter. I sent you all these things. I sent you a whale. I sent you all these things to help you. And this is exactly what happens with us. God sends us all these things to help us, but we're looking for something else. And so to me, that's when the perspective shift comes in. We're looking for something else. This is how you want it to be. This is how you have envisioned it in your mind's eye. But is that is that for your best and highest? Because many times we envision these things, but it's not for our best and highest. It's not the best for us. And so I think a lot of times too, depending on where we grew up and how we were stationed and who we are, we don't often expect the best for ourselves. We give the best to other people, and we even give our best to other people. Sometimes we give all of our energy to other people and we don't have any left for ourselves. And so today is the day that we're stopping that. We are not doing that anymore, which is why I go live here daily. I go live on TikTok pretty much daily. And I actually just went live on Facebook because I was going with a friend of mine. And yeah, it was a whole situation. So I ended up just doing the live mostly, but that's okay, because I feel like that's what the spirit wanted. It's not rocket science and it's not hard to understand, But, you know, that's what God wanted me to go live and talk to the people that I talked to, because we had interesting, amazing conversations, even on the live. And, yeah, and just really speak life everywhere that I go, you know, and, you know, like, I'm so grateful for this space, and I'm so grateful for this energy, and I'm so grateful for the surrender. Now, there was a time a few years ago that I would not have said that. I'm like, surrender? Oh no, I will never surrender. I will always wave the white flag. You know, and so I think about that. But no, but now it's like, it feels like a beautiful space. You know, it's a beautiful space because everything truly is working out as I desire it, you know, and it's not, and the thing for me too, y'all, is I have always done things quick. I've always done everything really quickly. I've always done that. Like, I don't know what it is, but you know, I'm still that way. And my husband pulls my tail sometimes because he does things very slowly. You know, and sometimes I can see the value of that, but there are other times that I can't. So that is a thing, you know, but I really realized too is with this surrender, it has helped me to calm down and to slow down, and it's fueled my anxiety, like pushed it way down, because like I always carried a low level anxiety, and I didn't realize it until here in the last probably 10 years or so. They tried to put me on medication and stuff for it, but medication never has worked for me. It has actually made things worse, and so it doesn't work for me. Thank you for joining, David. So it doesn't work for me. So I stopped even trying with that. So I don't even, I've taken a few different things, and all of them did the same type of stuff. Like they all made me feel suicidal and all this stuff. So I just stopped and I don't do it. So I learned how to navigate for myself. You know, learn how to do things, you know, that felt good to me and that looked good to me and that I needed. You know, I actually just bought this brain teaser book because I think about stuff like that as we age. You know, we need to make sure we're teasing our brains and that our brains are working correctly, because who wants to have dementia? You know what I mean? So, anyhow, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for joining me. David, I appreciate you. Erica, I appreciate you joining me. Definitely catch me on TikTok. I'll probably be there in the next few minutes for just a little while. So catch me there. Um, but thank you so much for hanging out. And I hope that this has been a message that, you know, you could take and run with it, you know, and be able to improve your own life. All right. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I hope your day is magical. Bye now.